Welcome back to Two Homers and a Realist. We are here on the patio celebrating Oklahoma winning against Kansas 52-42. What a special, wonderful day. Let's say it together. We're back.
No, don't do that.
We won. We did win. Big day for OU to get the cart back on the track, or whatever metaphor you want to use. It wasn't perfect. Some elements were pretty frustrating. We're going to talk about those, but for the most part, all we can say is it was a victory, and the offense looked really good. So all of those things are positive. We got things moving in the right direction, got it in the W column. I think the crowd was fantastic. I think everybody was enthusiastic given all the circumstances. I got a lot to say about this game, but I'm Steve.
Lucas.
Jay.
And Connor.
All right, so we got the full crew here. We got a little bit of an audience, too. We are, like I said, out on the patio. We just got done watching Tennessee beat Alabama and TCU beat Oklahoma State, so pretty exciting finishes in those two games. We're enjoying some Whistle Pig, followed by some Angels Envy over here. We got beers. We got cigars. Shout out to Brad, and a thank you for the Linga Privada T52. It is an excellent cigar. I'm very appreciative of that. So what do you guys think about the game today?
Always
Who was
good
at
to
the
get a
game?
win.
Were you at the game,
I was
Steve?
at the game. Were you at the game, Connor?
I was there.
That's
Lucas,
right. I saw you right in front
I
of me.
was there.
Lucas was
Yeah,
there.
I know he was there because I saw his son right next to you, Connor,
Yeah.
sitting in a good seat, and
Yeah.
I looked over with my binoculars, and I could
He's
see
not
an
an
end-zone
he's not an
analyst
end zone analyst.
way,
That's
way up in the rafters.
bad parenting on my part.
Jay, where were you sitting?
I was on the bleachers
Oh, you were?
at Norman High football field.
It's a long ways to be.
Did you not realize
looking
it
at
was
the
a game
I
at,
went
at
to the
Memorial
wrong stadium.
Could you hear the
Yeah.
crowd from there?
No,
No? Oh, that's too bad. I thought we were pretty
I
loud.
was too busy listening to our own crowd with our dominating victory over Edmond North.
Well, we're going to talk about that game then. Let's just talk about how good you did against Edmond North.
33-0, about 400 yards rushing.
I was kidding. I don't care.
That's it. That's the highlights.
Well, Lucas, what did you think about this game today, the real game?
I was happy to get a victory. Offense looked amazing. Maybe Levy heard our criticism and decided to start, opening up the playbook.
It's obviously a listener.
And doing something other than what we tried against Texas and TCU. So defense still a little wish-washy, but I'll gladly take the victory.
I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. Initial thoughts, Jay?
I watched it in fast forward when I got home. I still am perplexed with the talent we have on the team to put up a defensive performance like that. It's 42 points is just too many
Frustrating.
against Kansas's backup quarterback. I don't know.
Connor?
Both what Jay and Lucas both said. Extremely impressed offensively. Finally made something of it, I feel like, and we're pretty dominant even with 3 turnovers. So that was great. And then, but on the defensive side of the ball, Jay used a great word, perplexed. I mean, there's a lot of talent out there that, and we made some plays on defense, but just the overall consistency and not being able to get off the field at times when I really feel like we should have, that was tough. So bittersweet, but back in the win column, I can't be too upset about that.
I mean, I guess we're 2 games back-to-back of not having major busts in the defense.
Yep.
Which is, if you're trying to look for something positive
Yeah, I would say that
after that TCU
that is a
debacle.
positive. We're not letting guys get just wide open behind us as far as we can tell. And I was trying to scan the field to watch for that, even if that quarterback wasn't able to find him. And I didn't see the guys getting open there. But then again, it is Kansas and their talent level, as well as their offensive scheme might not allow for it the way TCU's did. I'd describe this as the most Lincoln Riley-like game that we've had this season, and one of the more Lincoln Riley-like games, including all the Lincoln Riley-like games. This is one where the offense had to win the game by outscoring the opponent. They had to kind of go tit for tat. In fact, it scared me when we got to a point where we were yielding the ball back, and after we scored, they scored, we scored, they scored, and I believe we had to punt at that point. But we did get a 3-and-out, or we got a punt out of them. It may not have been a 3-and-out, and so that was good to see in the back and forth. It was also one where we had to defend an onside kick at the end of the game, which is very Lincoln Riley-like, where we have a game where we have a 3-score lead, and all of a sudden they're back in the game. And interestingly, we'll get into this maybe in more detail in a second, but we had some clock management issues at the coaching level, which is very Lincoln Riley-like. And at the end of the game, that really was telling, because that gave Kansas an ability to get back into the game when they otherwise shouldn't have been able to get back into the game and should not have had enough time. But we gave them a lot of time they shouldn't have had. Positives, obviously the offense looked great. I thought they looked crisp. I thought Dylan Gabriel looked better than he's looked all season, especially top to bottom. 60 minutes to 1 second to go in the game. If you look at his entire game, he was as crisp as he has ever been, aside from 2 really bad, almost inexplicable fumbles. We don't know for sure. It looks like there's a debate about the interception, if it's his fault versus the receiver, if it's at least where he intended to throw the ball and he just expected the receiver to do something different. It could still be Dylan Gabriel's fault, but it wasn't an errant pass, as you pointed out, Lucas. It wasn't something that was just a very poorly thrown ball. Got a lot of young players in earlier, not as early maybe as we wanted, but they did run a 4-2-5 defense basically the entire game, which is one of the things we had said we would like to see, either the 4-2-5 or the young players, and we kind of got a nice mixture of both, so that was good to see. Maybe they're actually taking to heart something that we've noticed, which is you're on the precipice of making or not making a bowl game, a very vital part of rebuilding a program, and so getting the marginal victory to get to a bowl game and get the 15 extra practices is pretty important. So it looks like maybe they are focusing on that, but I think they'd probably say overall they're just trying to win football games, and they did that today.
Well, Kansas is a very good run team, and it felt like today we went ahead and chose we have to stop one of the 2.
Right.
So it looks like we picked, let's slow down the run game, make the backup beat us with his arm, and he threw some nice balls. And
He did. He was a good quarterback. He's a good backup quarterback for sure.
We've got a long ways to go in the secondary for sure,
Yeah,
and
we
it's some of those plays are really tough to watch when it's. I mean, we've been saying it for the past 3 weeks, and especially after last week. I mean, watching teams like Texas Tech and just other teams that are not as talented as we are have defensive backs who can go and make plays on the ball, which we made some good plays today. Like, I think it was an improvement in some areas, but we're still just it feels a lot of the same of what we're used to, right? So I don't know, a lot of work to be done in that area.
Kansas was leading the league with an average of 105 rushing yards on defense, giving up only 105 rushing yards on defense. Today we had 298.
Yeah.
I feel like in the first half the offensive line looked fantastic, blowing guys off the
There were some
ball,
big holes.
creating some definite
Yes.
running lanes. It did suck right before halftime, giving up, no points from the 1 yard line.
Getting no points.
Yeah, getting no points from the 1 yard line, trying to punch those last 2 runs in, and not getting the blow off the ball there. But for the rest of the first half, I mean, the rushing was fantastic.
And I don't know-
Against a good
Best
defense.
game
We
our
were
offensive
talking,
line's had.
and we've been debating who the number 1 running back is. It looks like, to our eyes, correct me if I'm wrong, that we kind of see it as Barnes is really the best running back, and Gray is a solid number 2 now. If for no other reason, Major's got problems getting back on the field. We don't know if it's injuries, if it's off-the-field issues, what's going on. I will say, I think Gray looks better because the offensive line is really good. Is blocking really well, at least in this game. And when you're not touched for 8 yards, anybody sitting around this fire could get 7 or 8 yards.
Right.
It's the yards after that he kind of struggles with, but he ran the ball really well today. He doesn't seem to me to be the guy who's going to take it to the house and break a tackle. In fact, I think he runs to get the tackle rather than to break the tackle. I'm a little bit frustrated by the way he plays there. But Oscar, it's okay. That dog's not going to get you. So I thought he ran the ball well. We ran the ball well. I know you like Barnes more than Gray. We all agree. So Barnes looks pretty good in terms of explosiveness, and I think trying to get to a point where he can break a tackle. But it doesn't matter if we get offensive line play like we're getting, where we're getting 6, 7, 8 yards. just by virtue of good blocking and opening up holes, that's going to be really powerful for us.
And we actually ran it well against Texas. We just had no other threat whatsoever.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see it
Easier.
translate to
Very good.
having
Actually, a
threat to throw the
handoff
ball.
instead of
Yeah.
wildcat.
Very
Yeah.
good point.
Eric Gray has been proving us wrong since we said that he shouldn't be the running back,
Yeah.
the number one running back. I mean, today, those two runs, the one that he had for a touchdown that got called back and then immediately goes and does the exact same thing but for more yards. I mean, he looked like a really good back. There is just times where he's not the, like you used the word a second ago, Steve, he's not the explosive back that Barnes is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, he led the team with 20 carries and 176 yards.
wow.
8.8 per
I'll
carry.
take that all day.
And his long was 35. So
Yeah.
that's some really
That's
great.
some good work.
You know, a lot of times you'll have a 80-yard run will skew the average, but
Right.
35-yard being your
How many
longest run,
carries?
20.
I will say that usually when a guy gets 20 carries, he does eventually get a bust out, at
Yeah.
least 60, 70-yard.
Barnes had 21, and
I don't
his
think
longest
he's
rush
capable
was
of it.
7.
Wow.
That's surprising.
That is surprising, but it's kind of when you look at when he got the ball.
69 yards on
I'd be
21
interested
carries.
to see yards after contact. I would bet Barnes is right with him, actually.
Well,
But-
he only had 69 yards rushing.
Yeah,
on
but
21 carries.
But like I'm
But,
saying, like
yeah,
Gray's getting 8 yards and then getting tackled.
yeah. The spin move was effective today for Gray.
It was.
He had one run where he had 2 spin moves and probably got 10 yards on it.
Yeah,
It was
he had
pretty
one that he
impressive.
danced 3 times. Had he danced just 2, he probably would have done a little bit better.
Yeah.
But he probably has a command of the offense better than anyone else, if nothing else for virtue of that he's played so much and has so much time with the ones. But I bet he blocks better. I bet he knows the schemes. I bet he probably catches the ball as well or better than any other running back.
Yeah, athleticism-wise, once Barnes figures out his vision and the speed of the game and different things like that, he has a much higher upside, that's for sure.
I think we used the pass to set up the run a lot today.
Yes.
The first couple drives was just total passing. The inside little slant was wide open the whole day,
Yeah.
and for 7 to 8 yards, like every time we threw it, it was open, and it was a great. He was humming the ball today.
He was.
Gabriel really, I had questions coming into the season because I didn't think his arm strength was that great. I still have questions about the deep ball not being on target. But today, the 8 to 12 yard routes over
his
the middle,
intermediate passing
he was
today was great.
firing
Yeah,
it.
he got down
Firing it in
all
there.
of those intermediate post and slant routes were on target today.
Yep.
There was maybe one that was not quite where you want it
He
to
threw
be.
one or two
One
behind.
One
the
was
behind
receiver.
behind
Yeah.
Mims.
Yeah.
That was pretty bad.
But overall, I mean,
even the deep balls were pretty good. One of them, I think, Mims got interfered with, and they didn't call it. And then another, I think he got lost in the sun because he slowed up and then realized where the ball was and tried to accelerate but couldn't get to it. That was pretty
The one that
impressive.
Freeman caught was a great catch as well.
Mm-hmm.
I give Gabriel a B plus today, strictly because of the fumbles.
Absolutely.
Like I said, the interception, the receiver stopped on the route. We don't know if who's at fault there, like you talked about earlier, but the fumble was on an option play. He went with a fake pitch and then couldn't keep his hand on the
control
ball.
it. Mm-hmm.
And then the later one, you said Barnes might have maybe bumped into him on the pass.
I didn't think so. It looks like it from one angle, and another angle it looks.
I thought he
clean.
just kind of lost the ball in his
My
grip.
theory on it is, just like we see him throw the ball too hard at times, I think his tension level is too high, and I think he's gripping the
Grip
ball too
really
hard,
tight.
and it just pinched out of his hand at a very inopportune time for sure.
I mean, we've mentioned before, it's encouraging to see if Gabriel plays just a little bit better than he had been,
Yeah,
how lethal the offense can be.
and it was super lethal.
And there was even still stuff today
Mhm.
that he can even do
Stuff was left
much
on the
better than
field.
today.
Absolutely.
So that's encouraging.
Yeah, I mean,
going
he went
forward.
29 to 42, but he had 403 yards, 2 touchdowns, interception, and 2 fumbles, obviously. But
And a few of them were stretching the field trying to throw it deep, which didn't work out, but it does open the field up in a lot of ways. I guess back to your point of setting up the run with the pass.
yep,
It definitely forced that defense to be very to respect the pass.
I mean, we're approaching the 800-yard mark if we don't have those.
Well,
fumbles,
like the
interceptions.
tweet that you pointed out, which was astonishing to me because I didn't even realize we had that many. The stats look like they did. 487 yards in the first half, second most in OU history, which is obviously saying something with the offenses that we've had. it maybe speaks to how good we've been in second halves with as many high-performing offensive yard performances that we've enjoyed. But that's incredible. And it wasn't one where you look up and say, well, obviously because of gigantic bust-away plays, 90-yard passes, or 80-yard runs. It was just something that was more methodical, and that was impressive to see. So that was something that I was pretty pleased about as well.
What do you think about the overall flow of play calling?
I thought the tempo was good. I thought the tempo was more appropriate. I thought that the mixture of plays was very appropriate. It's hard to argue with the success that they had, but I felt like they had a command of what was going on in the field versus trying to just randomly try things, and if they work, they work. If they don't, they don't. It seemed like they had an ability to sit there, look at the defense, and decide what they wanted to do.
First game we scored first also, whole season.
How about that? That's crazy. First lead we had today, the first lead we had in over a month of calendar time. How about that? That's kind of crazy and frustrating.
I didn't like the tempo in the second, or especially the beginning of the fourth quarter.
Yes.
We've got a 21-point lead. We've got the ball. We're snapping it with 28 seconds on the clock, when at that point it should have, not that you're just trying to grind the game away necessarily, but with a 21-point lead, there's no reason to be snapping the ball at 28, no matter what play you're running. If it's a pass or a run, it doesn't matter.
I agree.
You need to be snapping that ball at least inside of 10. You don't have to necessarily run down to 5, but get it down to 10 seconds, because that's 15, 18 seconds per snap.
Yep.
And we had a couple drives like that, and then finally it seemed like they figured out, towards the very end, obviously you're going to start running some clock out, but
it's just
they should have done it a little bit earlier, because Kansas State on that final drive, I was sitting there doing the math in my head. Kansas on that final drive, I was trying to do the math in my head, which I hate math, but there probably would have been about 2 minutes less on the clock at the end of that game.
I want to talk about that, but before we criticize the end of the game, I'd like to talk about and get you guys' view on the end of the half. So I think there's some room for debate there. But in my estimation, I was a little frustrated with, we get the ball back, I think, with 1:33 to go. Am I right on that?
I thought it was like a minute 40 something.
Maybe it was. We obviously are choosing to be conservative. That's okay. I don't exactly like it because we've had offensive success. If you look at what we did at Kent State, I'm thinking you can be a little more aggressive. At least there's an intermediate between just running the ball into the line of scrimmage versus throwing the ball deep or trying to be ultra aggressive. You can at least see what can happen and try to move the ball down the field, and rely on your defense if you have to punt with 47 seconds to go. We were being very conservative, and then somehow get into a situation with that. I think that was Gray's longest run of the day.
Yeah, 35
he
yard
goes
run or
35 yards, and then you're looking up and there's like 40-some seconds. You're like, well, now you better get going, because now you're in scoring position. So they do, and they turn it into high gear, which is what I would have liked to have seen. And my criticism would be what I'll talk about in a second, when they get really aggressive and gamble at the very end of the game. If you're going to do that, why didn't you feel compelled to do that at the 25-yard line?
Exactly.
So anyway, they get down, and was there a questionable call? Am I confusing two different things? Where we get the ball basically to the 1 yard line. Was it?
Yeah, it was the Eric Gray.
It was Mims.
The Mims
diving for the sideline. Diving for the end zone.
Okay. Yeah, right. So very confused about if there just wasn't a good enough angle or what, because on that very long, like what it says about a 17-yard play or something, it looks to us like he gets into the end zone. It looks to us as if his knees are clearly off the ground. I didn't see, maybe people who watched it on TV could say if his hand, you said his left hand.
His left hand, when he went to brace himself,
might have hit out of bounds, but
it might have touched out of bounds.
I didn't
but his
see
knees weren't
that
down.
Or hear about that, and so even the spot seemed questionable to me. But regardless of all of that, we've got 9 seconds to go.
10 seconds.
10 seconds to go, and there's an injury. Very unfortunate. Hope the kid's okay. The Kansas kid broke his leg or his ankle or something. Very, very unfortunate. He was obviously
and that
a lot
was
of pain.
5 minutes of real time that you gathered on the sideline.
Can figure out what to do.
It's 10 seconds left.
And what did you
recommend? The play's going to start at the whistle. So when you come out of the huddles from the injury timeout, as soon as they spot the ball and the ref steps back and blows the whistle, you can be in your set. And to me, at that point,
And they were. And what did they do?
they spiked the ball.
Now, what would you have done?
I would have lined up. They used Barnes on the Wildcat earlier. Well, it wasn't even a Wildcat. They had
Just a
Dylan
direct
back.
snap.
They had Gabriel back there, and they just direct snapped it to Barnes, which personally I would have liked to have seen Willis and Parker set up as
So you're-
quote, fullbacks, let's say,
You're setting
and direct snap it.
exactly. You're sitting somewhere in Edmond in the north end zone watching
No.
this.
I'm in the
seeing-
north end zone where the play happens.
Seeing the same thing I'm saying and screaming. Why don't even put a quarterback?
We still
in
have a
there.
timeout at that point.
Exactly. At that point, I'm saying don't even break the huddle with a quarterback. Go in there with all blockers, direct snap it to a
Yep.
running back, and put that ball in the
And
end
if he
zone.
doesn't get it, say 6 seconds goes off the clock. You got 4 seconds left. You take the field goal.
And now they've spiked the ball. Kansas calls timeout, and we're on the sideline. And I'm saying yet again, now Kansas has no timeouts. Again, break the huddle without a quarterback. There's nothing they can do about it.
Now there's 8 seconds
They
on
won't
the
know
clock.
what to do. There's 8 seconds left. You can do that, and then you can call your timeout and get another play to set it up.
Instead, they hand it off. He runs into the pile, gets stopped. Then we call the timeout. What,
And then-
2 seconds left?
And then I think we take the foolish move of being too risky and going for it on 4th down rather than take the sure point.
Is this a situation of he makes it, we love it, and then
No.
instead
Not me.
we walk away with nothing and we're mad?
I'm mad.
I
because
wanted the field goal,
I do like math,
but I
know
think
you
it would have.
don't.
I think they would have already, honestly.
To me, the math
scored
not to me
in
but
my
to-
situation.
to the truth in the universe. The math shows that the reason you go for it on 4th down when you're in that situation in terms of the goal line is dominated by or supported by the fact that you'll get the ball back. If you don't get it, you'll likely get the ball back in scoring position very quickly. Well, you're not going to do that with a few seconds to go. Therefore, that element of the equation's out of there. It's just about your probability of scoring versus the much higher probability of getting a field goal. So in that case, you kick the field goal.
Yeah.
And I wish they would have kicked the field goal and take the points.
If it's 4th down, you get stuffed, then it's their ball on the 1 yard line.
Right.
And then you never know. Safety happens, or like you said, or you force a
Field
punt.
position.
And
Yeah,
that's
field
why
position,
later in
but
the
it's
game,
the end of the half.
In the third game, in the third quarter, when I got into a bit of a discussion with the guy that sits next to me who did not understand math, and I was having to tutor him a little bit, it was clear that that is a position where you go for it, even though we got stuffed, even though we got stopped, that you go for it to try and get it rather than kick the field goal, because in that point, or did we get that touchdown actually? That's where Gabriel scored.
Yeah, we scored
That's
the
where
touchdown.
Gabriel scored.
When we
And-
thought he handed it off to Barnes, who ran right through the end
even
zone.
if you don't, even if you don't, you get stopped, you get the ball back likely at the 40, 50 yard line,
Yeah.
and you have a chance to score. So he didn't understand that, and so he's confused because he's just thinking we are gambling and we should have 6 more points, automatic points, as if field goals are automatic. But in that case, at the end of the game, you absolutely kick the field goal, I believe, on 4th and 1. So that was frustrating and a little bit concerning in terms of, can this coaching staff make really good risk-reward decisions? Obviously, for long-time listeners of the pod, they'll know this is something I criticized Lincoln Riley about repeatedly. His understanding of risk-reward was really poor. I thought this was a demonstration of bad risk-reward management. So I thought that was unfortunate. Any other thoughts on that end of the quarter or end of that half?
I have always found it interesting that offensive coordinators just outthink themselves. I mean, so many of us longtime football fans, obviously we're not at the level that they are of coaching, but some things just seem so easy and so simple to do. And you've proven you can do it this year. It's not like, hey, we've never even practiced this. Let's go ahead and do it right now.
Right.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do
It's
that
just-
thing that you know how to do.
Well, who was the big guy back there? Who
Yeah,
was
we put the big
huge
guy in the
lineman
game?
back there that was in the backfield.
Yeah,
that
we
was
put-
our defense. It was a defensive
Was it
lineman.
Coe or
No, I
something?
think it was Halton.
Oh, it was
It was-
Grayson Halton.
yeah.
But I mean, it's just like you said, you outthink, you outcoach yourself. Line up and go. If you're gonna do it, which I'm with Steve, I would have much rather taken the points at the end of the half. Like, it was a terrifying moment where it's like, man,
Just like
with-
Georgia.
With this team, you just don't know.
Now, would
like-
that have put us up 17?
Yeah.
So
Like
that's
this-
3 scores.
Right.
Yeah.
Going into the half with,
Right.
with Kansas getting the ball back, it's essentially a wash, and you're kicking off after a score anyways. So, I think the most frustrating part for me was the fact that we line up twice there, and for whatever reason, it's so like you feel it in your bones. Like, at least me as an OU fan, when we line up for something like that, I'm thinking it's probably 75% chance we're not getting in the end zone. Like it just,
It
I
is.
never have that confidence. It's just like we
It's
line
funny
up
how
on,
that works.
on 4th and 1 on the 40 or something like that. I don't feel like we're going to get it ever. Which that's obviously, I'm sure that those are not accurate numbers.
But you
still,
feel
it's
like
just-
every other team, 4th and 1, is guaranteed they're going to get it
Yeah,
on.
and I feel like every other team has a quarterback who can basically fall forward and get into the end zone.
Well, it's like Brent Venables said, some of these guys got scars. We've got scars
Yeah.
from past performances of not being able to pick that
My
up.
liver hurts a lot.
Well, we have end of game criticism as well. But before we get to that, I want to point out something that I think several of us in our group were noticing and talking about and I think I'm remembering the same one, when Gabriel scores on that 4th down. Is that the one where they had the dual penalties, or is that a different one where they had the dual penalties?
There was like
and
a
one
head-
of them got assessed on the kickoff.
Looks like a headbutt or something.
It was that one.
It was that one.
It was that one.
Thought I remembered that right. So we're kicking off from the 50-yard line. So in that case,
Perfect time for a squib kick.
perfect
Thank
time
you.
for a squib
Exactly.
Because your guys are 15 yards further up.
kick. Even an end
be able
zone
to go make a
analyst
tackle.
notices this,
Well, and that's the
yes.
thing is, you don't make the other team pay for the penalty that they just got.
Yeah, because
We
we've been
just give
kicking
the ball where we
we're
want
kicking
the
it out of
ball
the end zone the whole
anyways.
time anyway, from the
Exactly.
35.
If that's
So there's
the
no
case,
difference.
I want OU guys to go be rough at the end of plays after a
Right,
score.
'cause
if
who
people are going to be
cares?
kicking out of the end zone.
Yeah,
Like,
and you might get somebody out of the game. So I said just aim for one of the guys that is the middle up, not either the up man or somebody that's in the intermediate zone about the 30, 20-yard line and nail him. Just kick for him. Kick a deadline, beeline kick right at him, which for long-time Sooner fans would remember Tim Lasher in 1983 lines up to kick an onside kick. They call off the onside kick. The only one who didn't get the call was Tim Lasher, the kicker. He kicks it right at an OSU player. It bounces off of him into our arms, and we end up winning the game. Just kick it at him and make that kid make a play. I guarantee you, a ball moving the way a ball that's kicked is going to do, it's going to be very difficult to field.
If it hits the player, it could hit his helmet and bounce towards you.
Exactly.
It could hit his shoulder pads and
It could
bounce
go
towards
left,
you.
right.
It could hit him in the stomach and bounce straight to the ground.
Then it's a scrum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like the Sugar Bowl back when we at the end of the game we kick it and it hits the Alabama guy and it bounces right back to us. We fall on it and that's ball game over.
Yep.
It's such a waste kicking out of the end zone in that
And that's,
scenario.
it's kind of first world problems on that. But
Right.
it seems like that's something that you could practice once a week for 15 minutes.
Or it's just a call.
Because those kickers
the
aren't
kickers,
doing, they're not doing anything else.
anything.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not scheming or game planning or learning anything.
And I guarantee you they'd love to do that.
Yeah.
And you just say, look, here's the deal. Here's what we're going to do. And this goes back to our thinking on, and I wrote a blog post on how we should reform the kicking game and kick more onside kicks. You create a lot of chaos when you do that. Worst case scenario, you're giving them the ball somewhere between the 20 and the 30-yard line. Do you know what happens on most kickoffs? You give them the ball between the 30 and the 20-yard line. So it's the same damn thing, but now you have a lot of opportunity to get the ball yourself. So that was just frustrating to me that they don't see that and think about that as an opportunity, especially with this. I guess I know about Michael Turk. I think he's a very sharp young man. I would assume the rest of our kickers are too. It wouldn't take much practice to say, here's what we're going to try to do. And you got your up men and everybody on the kick team that is probably in a position to go out and pursue a football. They're speedy. They can do it. They're athletes. Give them a chance.
Or if you just, or the squib kick, where you just squib it down to, say, the 10-yard line, they pick the ball up, you're 15 yards closer on your kickoff coverage.
and they can't fair catch that.
And yes, and you can't fair catch that because
Right.
it's already bounced
Right.
off the ground multiple
Exactly.
times. So
They gotta react
at best
and make
case,
something
if they
happen.
have a perfect block situation set up, they're probably still not getting past the 30.
Exactly, because that guy's not fast.
Yeah, so you've given them 5 yards as
Yeah.
opposed to kicking out of the end
We'll
zone.
take it. We'll take that gamble every day. So that was frustrating to me. But let's talk about the end of game because Lucas you pointed this out in a text, and it's good I didn't notice it.
Like the
because
10 or 11 minute mark.
I would have been more livid than I already was. Tell me what was going on with about 10 minutes to go.
We weren't running hurry up or tempo, whatever we're calling it, but we would run the ball, get 6 or 7 yards, and then we're lining up, and next thing you know, we're snapping the ball with 28 seconds left. We're trying to salt the game away, up 21. You're in the fourth quarter. There's no reason to not get it inside of 10 before you.
Or inside of 5.
Yeah, well, I love the 5, but maybe they need to look to the sideline. Maybe at 15 seconds they look at the sideline, see if they still want to run the play or whatever,
Right.
and then snap it at somewhere between 5 and 10 seconds, and you've taken 15 to 20 seconds off the clock that you wouldn't have. And when we had a sustained drive there too.
Absolutely.
And we're talking the difference in having 2 less minutes in the game by the time the game ends.
Yeah.
And see that I think a lot of that is you see it with the new staff for sure. How much is Venables saying or thinking, let's run our system, let's make sure we're getting the reps in, let's make sure we're doing everything that we need to be doing so we're playing the correct way and like how we want to be playing, as opposed to, no, this is time for me to manage this and close this thing out.
Yeah. But the correct way is we may be in a situation later in the year where we've got a 10-point lead, and you want to start burning clock off because
you need to manage.
You're still trying to go score.
Right.
You're not. That's not affecting anything by taking the snap at 28 or 5.
No, right.
You're still running the same play. You're still trying to go down the field and score, but you're taking the extra piece of it off of the 20 seconds of snap.
Wait to break the huddle with 15 seconds to go. Get to the line of scrimmage. Look to the side. Decide what you need to do. Snap the ball with 5 seconds. Because as you add that up, if we were to go back and add it up, I would conservatively say we're talking about 2 minutes of game time at least that we left on the clock that gave them options they wouldn't have had.
There wouldn't have been an onside kick at the end of the game.
Even if there were, they would be onside kicking
down by 10.
Down by 10 with like
45 seconds left
at most.
Yeah.
Not with 2.5 minutes left. And where it's actually they could do this. I didn't like seeing that. I thought that was bad clock management. Again, back to the Lincoln Riley era. That really concerned me. I'd like to see that sharpened up a bit. That'll come to bite you in some game in the future. And maybe this is something that you look at the success defensively that most of this staff has enjoyed at other programs.
That it's not as big a concern.
With Venables, it's not as big
but it
a
is
concern.
On this team.
But it is right now, and it will be in a critical game. I don't care how great you are, you're going to be playing Alabama someday or somebody that is going to be a threat that you're going to want to salt away a game and take every second you can, and these type of decisions are critical in those games.
And what I also don't understand, nowadays you've got all these analysts. Why is there not a dedicated analyst that is a math guy, which wouldn't be me, but I can still point it out when I see it? Why is there not a guy that is on the headset that says to Levy or whoever, hey, if we start snapping it
in the booth with him.
If we start snapping this at 5 instead of 28,
look how much
we can take 2.5 to 3 more minutes off the clock in this fourth quarter, and you're still going to score. You're still trying to score.
Yeah.
There's literally no downside to doing it properly. And all it takes is for one person to let the coaches know, because I know Brent's got so much stuff going on that he's still focusing on defense. Obviously, Levy's still trying to score, but you have to be smart about it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. One other really kind of incidental point of criticism, but I think it's worth mentioning. Maybe they've got this figured out and I'm wrong, but on the onside kick, we've got 3 guys that are lined up to receive the onside kick that are 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage where the ball's going to be kicked from. That means they only have a 20-yard advantage on guys that are running their direction, already in motion, running their direction. If they choose to kick the onside kick behind or to them, I'm not sure if that's good math, because you might have 3 against 1 where our 1 is the guy running backwards. I don't like that formation. I like one guy deeper. Even if it's the middle guy, maybe they know what they're doing. But to me, it's pretty scary to think that they could do that, and all of a sudden they've got the ball on the 20-yard line if they recover that. If they have the ball, if you sacrifice a little bit of the probability of them getting the ball at the 40-yard line, that seems like a decent trade, because the ball at the 40 versus the ball at the 20 is significantly different in those two circumstances.
Absolutely.
So a couple other things to sort of talk about, maybe criticize or wonder about. One is the interceptions. Very, very happy with an incredible acrobatic interception by Conley. Is his
Colden.
name?
Colden. C.J. Colden.
It was Unity number 22.
I'm going to get Unity number 22. Colden, great interception, and good job by Danny Stutzman not knocking the ball out of his hands. I swear to God, I thought he was going to knock it out of his hands. But that was a great interception. Then you look at other interceptions that were dropped. Key Lawrence dropped one that was right in his hands.
He's dropped several in the last.
I think
two
before
seasons.
Deshaun White intercepted the ball, he dropped one.
dropped
A
one,
couple plays
too.
before that, right?
Well,
And-
the play right before that, when he batted the ball down, he easily could have caught the ball out of midair.
Easily.
Yes,
It's
could-
Deshaun White we're talking about.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I do want to give props to the defensive line today. It seemed like we had
Yes.
3 or 4 batted balls. It was
Very
one of those
happy with that.
situations to where you know you're not going to get to the quarterback, and you just kind of time
Get
it.
your arms up.
Yeah, get your arms up.
They did a great job.
They did.
Well, and I mean,
But I would like
think-
to see us pull some of those interceptions down.
Absolutely.
And that'll be kind of a measure of if we've reached where we want to be in terms of a defense
A lot of that's luck.
that we can get.
You know, when you go to bat a
through.
ball, there's no telling where it's going to pop
But
up.
when it lands in your hands.
You're
No, I'm
wearing,
saying
you've got a
drop-
helmet on. It's not like
No,
you have
no,
the
no.
best field of
I'm saying
view.
Key Lawrence
Yeah.
and Deshaun White.
Yeah, those two
When they're in
plays.
your hands, you
Yeah.
got to bring those balls down.
Yeah. Key
But-
Lawrence had the first Kansas touchdown. They throw it deep over the middle. Key Lawrence gets there, and it looks like he has a chance to maybe dive and make a play to tip the ball away. And instead, he decides to hit the receiver. And with today's rules, it looked like he let off just enough because he didn't want to get a targeting necessarily. So he does a good job of hitting the guy, and the ball pops up. And the Kansas guy kind of like flips over, and it just ends up in his arms, which that's our luck, it feels like, on that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was the same situation. I think Woody last week had an opportunity to intercept the ball, and he went for the hit instead of going for the pass breakup or
We've had
interception.
several of those
But
against TCU.
it was a good play on the ball. It just didn't turn out in our favor because it popped up right to the receiver, obviously. But I think he could have got a pass breakup at minimum,
Yep.
just diving for the ball instead of going for the hit.
Yeah.
So DJ Graham switched to offense this week. Did he get in on any as a receiver? He didn't get any balls thrown to him.
Christian said he got in on one play.
He was in on one play.
And he was still wearing number
split
9.
out- He was wearing number 9. He was split out wide as just kind of one of the mid,
Like a slot
He was in between
receiver.
he was in between the slot and the outside receiver.
Well, I like the fact that we've got a guy that's moving positions from only the standpoint of I like the idea that they're looking creatively at opportunities and thinking about things differently. I will say I find it a little perplexing that they're letting him wear number 9 when Braden Willis, hats off to him, great player,
Yeah, again,
been doing
best
wonderful
player on
stuff
the team.
for us, maybe the best player on the team. He also wears number 9, and so the problem with it is, to me, it's an opportunity to have a random, unfortunate, unforced error mistake that could cost you dearly when you have 2 players with the same number going out on the football field. Why not just change it?
Maybe they
let's
didn't have-
take that chance out of the game.
Maybe they didn't have the extra alternate jersey, so they didn't have a pre-made jersey and a different number for him to switch to for this game.
That's a
And-
good point.
And maybe by next game, when they're back to wearing, let's see, next game's
Maybe
a road game, they're back to wearing white. And
I don't know. You
and
told
he
me that
changes
they
his
could
number.
print these jerseys.
Well, you
like
could also
They
take
can.
in turn
you could also
seconds,
take
so.
someone who's absolutely not going to play,
Right.
and give him that jersey.
Yeah.
Because only if they happen to have the same name of Unity.
they could have gave him Booty's jersey because he wasn't getting in the game. He could have went out there in number 14 and played wide receiver.
This is true. So
Unity Booty.
We
Unity
did
Booty.
have a bet Wednesday, didn't we?
how
Or-
many?
not
We had
bet,
we
but
not a bet, but we said how many.
Graham get
will,
a catch.
Will Graham get a catch? I thought
Yeah.
he'd get a catch. You didn't think he?
I thought he would just
You thought he
just
would.
to get him
You
in the
didn't think
game.
he would. Jay again is right.
They
He's
really
a
didn't run
master.
different receivers out there today. They
No, and I
they
think
went with the
that's-
core.
I think that's a good thing.
It was
Because
Weiss.
fi-
And it's good to see
finally-
Theo Weiss get a
Yes.
few
Yep.
balls thrown at
Yeah.
him and do some good
Gavin
things.
Freeman did get in there and get a catch or two.
He needs to play more.
Gavin Freeman is a dude, and I can't wait till we sign him to a full scholarship and let him just run.
He was
wild.
impressive, so that gives us a chance, as we've already touched on a little bit, the uniforms. So they weren't black, as we thought they were from the
Yep.
pictures. They were this, like, really dark anthracite. I don't know what you'd call
You
it.
can
It
take
was-
away my complaint from the midweek pod because
you
they weren't
can
black.
Continue my complaint because they were still not OU uniforms. And not just me, not just everyone around me.
Even the end
not
zone
just
analyst.
Even the end zone analyst. Even the announcers on TV could not keep up because they could not read the numbers.
Yeah.
So they thought that Dylan Gabriel scored the first touchdown. That was gray. They thought that everybody, or
The
quite a
people
few
in the
people in the
stands.
stands thought that Drake Stoops had caught that pass when it was clearly Gavin Freeman. If you look at the speed of of the player who executes the play, you have to know that has to be Gavin Freeman.
I think that's
Well, there's not too
racist
many
on the crowd.
white wide receivers on one team. So to be fair,
Well, Well, no. To be fair, you couldn't read the uniform number. So
Yeah.
another
I was having
criticism
trouble
of the
finding
uniforms.
between Gray and Barnes. I was having a lot of trouble.
And the size
A
difference.
lot of us didn't know who if Barnes or Gray were
the
the
size
ones who
difference
scored
gives
that
it away,
run.
but I mean, maybe up there in the nosebleeds, y'all have a harder time seeing it. But I could tell the difference between Barnes and Gray, just in stature.
You can tell one butt from the other.
Yes.
Yeah, running away from you.
Yeah. Well, no, they scored a lot in the north end zone today, which I was
Gray
appreciative of.
Gray looked bigger today in that
uniform.
In that uniform. Yeah.
Well, what
For
about
sure.
Dylan Gabriel's bike shorts? He looked like he was a softball coach in the 80s. His shorts were so short and
I
tight.
don't think there's anything wrong with that. As
Well-
someone who's been pictured in very short shorts before and got criticized for it.
Legally, you're supposed to have them to the knee, and his were not. We watched a game earlier.
Legally, what do you go to a Catholic school? What
It
are
was
you
a
talking
kicker.
about?
No, the NCAA rule. They made that was one of the pushes they made.
I'm with you.
One of those point of emphasis
I
they
know.
did. I think it was last season.
I know.
That they made a point of emphasis that the players had to have their pants to their knee or something.
This I
Or,
remember.
or below the kneecap or something stupid.
Well, what do we think about that?
Let's talk about officials for a second.
I'm concerned. Yeah, let's talk about the officiating because I thought it was garbage.
I think I want to complain about the first touchdown drive.
Okay.
We had a terrible spot. I think it was Mims in the southeast corner. They marked it on the 4-yard line, and he was clearly at the 2. So we still score on the second play of that drive. It was a first and goal from the 4, but it would have been a first and goal from the 2. And we get 3 yards. I think it was Barnes. So then it's a 2nd and 1 from the goal. We punch it in right after. But if you give him the ball and he gets the 3 yards from the 2, that's a touchdown. It didn't come back to mean anything, but it was a really bad spot on the referees.
It's very frustrating. And so we had what some people who watched it on TV, I haven't seen it, they said it was a mythical or a mistaken face mask penalty called on us. It did look like a face mask in live action.
It did for me, and on the replay on the Jumbotron, it looked like it.
It's not Jumbotron. You keep saying that.
Sooner
it's like
Vision.
saying Kleenex.
Sorry.
So
who doesn't say Kleenex? Hand me a
it's
tissue?
a tissue.
No, it's a Kleenex.
The Kleenex people would disagree because they don't want it to become a generic term. It's a trademark issue. But we won't get into that. So there was a pass interference call that wasn't called when Mims had a chance to catch a ball. There was a pass interference call that was made up on another play. The guy didn't even touch him when the ball was thrown way behind the receiver, probably was uncatchable anyway. There was a holding penalty that didn't end up mattering because we moved back 10 yards and Gray scores on basically the same type of play immediately thereafter. But that was not a holding penalty. There was no holding penalty there.
How about the Mims fair catch?
Yeah,
punt.
and totally.
Oh
now
my
it was
gosh.
to their credit, it was a late fair catch, but then
It doesn't matter.
The guy still ran into him.
He ran into him.
And then there was a later one where he called a fair catch with plenty of time, and the defender fell down and rolled into him.
Yes.
yeah.
And
Yes.
he kind of,
He
hopped up
yeah.
like it maybe, twisted his ankle just a smidge.
I worried
and he
about
wasn't
that.
blocked into him.
Right, no.
The defender was trying to hold up and fell and like rolled into him. No call there. So that's 2 kick catches interferences essentially that should have been called, and neither were.
It was very
Is it the
frustrating.
conspiracy theorist of we're leaving the Big 12, they're still pissy about it, all that kind of stuff? It's entirely possible. But either way, both of those should have been called.
Yep.
I thought so too. I thought that was extremely frustrating. I thought that I don't know. I don't know if it's worthy of trying to say it's a conspiracy. Is it just, my opinion is there's not a conspiracy per se, but I think they definitely have a view against OU, and that I think is unconsciously seeping into their decision making about calls they make, what they look at, what they look for, their sensitivity to what they will and won't call, and it's working to OU's disadvantage.
The listeners may say, well, that's a homer saying that, but I'm the realist and I'm saying that, so you got to believe it.
Well, I don't think the listeners of this pod are going to say that.
How
The
many-
listeners are going to say, I'm way off base, and it's absolutely a conspiracy because I know what our listeners and what most of the Sooner family, Sooner Nation believes, and that is that we're getting screwed by this conference.
How many holding calls have our opponents gotten against us this year?
It's not many.
It
very
is not
rare.
many.
I can't think of any material ones.
There was one on the final drive, midfield, when Kansas was going to score.
Yes, I forgot about yes.
And they end up throwing, 25-yard pass or something for a first down. and it was clear holding on the left tackle against whoever our Russian was.
Agüebu, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoever was
Oh,
rushing
well,
around the end.
Well, no,
He got
that
mauled.
was, and then the time that
Mauled.
the guy's chasing the runner down the field, and the guy reaches out twice and grabs our player, just as he's trying to pursue the runner with the ball. It was egregious. It was right there. It was what any official would be looking at because he's looking at the play, and no call. So I didn't understand that. Very, very, very frustrating. I don't know. It's a frustrating thing to have to try to work around. It will be really frustrating if it costs us a national championship this year, which we're obviously going to play for. But it will be frustrating if it costs us a bowl game, to be a realist.
Looking through
and
my
it
notes,
could.
I have 2 noise complaints. I've got the announcer yelling "boomer"
He
again.
still's doing that
after
crap.
it sounded like Levy was going to say something and get that taken care of.
Well, he did. No.
he was doing it faster this time.
He was doing it faster, and he wasn't giving all the other details because he has been giving every detail of the play.
And then saying
The down
"boomer"
and
as we're
distance,
snapping the ball.
what yard line we're on, who the quarterback is, and what he had for breakfast, and then saying "boomer." Now he's just saying "boomer" after
But it's
he
still
says first
unneeded,
down.
if
It's
you ask me.
unnecessary.
It
We
is
don't
unnecessary.
need. We're OU. We don't need to celebrate first downs.
My other noise complaint is the fans when we're on defense on third down. The loudest you can be in that stadium is yelling and clapping together, and instead you've got 2/3 of the crowd holding up the number 3 with their hand
Yep.
and not making any noise. We're trying to disrupt
Right.
the offensive play call, or check into an audible, whatever you want to say.
Yes.
You're trying to disrupt their offense on third and whatever, and you've got all these people holding up their 3 fingers and not making any
I've
sound.
never
And
understood it.
We
I
just
thought
started
it-
that within the last year, and it makes no sense to me.
No,
It's been
it's
going
been
on
for
for
a
several
while.
years because Max
Since I was
did
in
it a couple
college.
years ago.
Yeah.
From what I've
and
seen,
it really bothered.
it's been this
what
year
are you doing
specifically.
And he said everybody does this, and now all of a sudden he was proven right, and everybody's doing it. It's really annoying to me because it doesn't make noise, and it is just it just gets in the way of me looking at the game. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're holding your hands up in some weird, distracting, waving 3 fingers in the air. It doesn't do anything to help the team.
No.
That really bugs
And
me.
I mean, like I said, it's not major, but you're really not helping
Well, you're not
anything as
making
a
it
crowd.
louder. You're supposed to be making it disruptive and loud. And the crowd was really good and loud otherwise today. I thought the crowd was really good considering the circumstances, but that's not helpful.
No.
That's weird student stuff who, I don't know. I don't
My
get
last note I think I had was the footwork on the Willis touchdown.
it. Oh,
When-
yeah.
So on the beginning of that play, he comes in motion from the offense's right to the left, and when he gets to about the guard, he does this little stutter move where he pretends, a lot of times you run the back and forth for the receiver to kind of see what the defense is setting up. Well, he does the run down the line and then slowed up and then went back into full motion and come across.
Continued in full
And it
motion.
completely, the defense didn't know what to do, and he slipped out
Froze
all
the
alone.
linebackers.
Slipped out all alone on the sideline. They throw it to him. He makes this little acrobatic, I don't even know, ballet
Yeah.
move on the sideline to keep himself in bounds. It was fantastic.
It was
It's
before
called a
he
half
scored.
pirouette, and it was amazing. He stayed in bounds. He tiptoes. It was very much reminiscent of Sterling Shepard against Tennessee several
Yep.
years ago.
Or DeMarco
It
against
was
Texas.
It was beauty.
Yep.
And it just shows. I tell you one thing. I want to brag on him and every player that plays like that. When you obviously have, I used to like to call it a nose for the end zone. You have that extra drive. You know that it's not enough just to execute the play because it's already a great play at that point. It's
Right.
a first down. You're first and goal. I'm finishing this play. I'm getting into the end zone. And that is the type of difference maker and difference maker play that we need to get to that next level
And
and be
Mims
the
did,
kind of team
the
we
Mims
want
when he
to be.
dove out, right before half, and we
Yes.
got screwed with that.
Yes.
I mean, same thing, nose for the end zone. He's trying to get there.
That I love that. So another shout out to him and any player who is giving it his all and doing that kind of performance. That is the type of football that we want to see played. It's more than just the conceded we deserve it. It's the kind of guy that knows he's got to earn it. He's got to work for it. He's got to go the extra mile. Because we watch these other games and watch some really good football teams. You see those difference makers and what they're able to do and the fact that they finish plays. And that's offense and defense. So today we saw better tackling. We definitely had a few missed opportunities, but we also had some really good tackles for loss. We had guys that got into the backfield and finished plays. We had one I can't remember who it was. He did a great job.
Unity.
It was Unity. It was Unity. I think it was Stutzman pretending to be Unity. He got into the backfield and missed his big tackle for a loss. I think it would have been a sack. But you had 3 other players pursuing, and they got him, so at least he slowed him down. But it's actually that first play, if you can finish that and get that tackle for a loss, that's something that will be a thing that we're going to look for as we go forward, and hopefully as we get better this season, but definitely into next season, get to a point where we can finish plays in a way that makes a big difference. If you can get that tackle for a loss, it can be the difference between winning and losing when you're at that next level.
Yep.
So that's something I'm looking forward to. We got an off week coming up. We're going to do a midweek pod. I'm excited about that. We might have a special guest, so stay tuned for that. But otherwise, we'll be here to talk about that. Any other thoughts about this game, though, and what we're doing?
I was glad to be proven wrong with my 35-31 Kansas prediction.
You know, as much as I love you being proven wrong, period, I really like it when you're proven wrong when it means the OU Sooners have won a football game.
I'm in agreement.
That was beautiful. You'll take that every day,
I'll take that every time.
I will help fund you betting against the Sooners if that's what it takes. I know you didn't.
I didn't lock Kansas.
You didn't lock Kansas, but
Nope.
You did in the ESPN picks take Kansas.
I did
notice that.
But that was as a 1. That was my lowest confidence on
I
that
took
one.
the Sooners as a 10, and I think I won that
That's
one.
not surprising.
As
Yeah.
did I.
Yep. Jay, any other thoughts?
No, I'm glad to see some of the young guys get some run. It's important going forward.
How do you think this did for us, considering there were recruits in the stands?
I don't know. It's a good question.
It's gotta
I mean,
help,
a
right?
win's better than a loss.
Jackson Arnold seemed impressed based on his tweet.
Yeah,
That's good.
He had to love what this offense looked like compared to the last couple weeks.
I think he had to love that. I think, to me, you had to be, as anybody who's thinking about OU as their next step in their career, you had to be looking at this as a game that knowing everything was on the line in a sense of a make or break. Where are you in this season? Getting things back together on the right track. But also, I'm going to go back to the atmosphere. I thought it was really positive. I was fearful that there were more people that were going to attend the homecoming parade than actually get there for the game. But it was a very strong attendance. It was a very strong crowd, very enthusiastic, stayed deep into that game, and it was hot. For those of us that were at the game, Jay, it was hot. It
I was in the
real
stands.
hot. It was, yeah. So I don't know if it was as hot in those stands as it was in our stands.
Well, I was only like
But it was
3 miles
really
away.
hot.
So
So I dress for by calendar, not by the weather.
Yeah.
And so it's mid-October, so I had 3 layers on.
I was looking
and
forward to hoodie season,
It was
too.
hot.
I will say defensively for the recruits, it's just another thing showing we need you.
Yep. You
I don't
can
know.
get in and play when you're young
Yeah.
because there's plenty of spots open.
It also is a glimmer of what is to come in the future, and this team could get real special if they become a part of it and join up, and we get the talent level that we need to execute at a high level. This could be a really special thing.
You can also sell to the defensive recruits. Look at our offensive capabilities. Look at who's coming in your class and the class was just before you offensively. You're going to have time to grow into a dominant defense, and that's ultimately obviously what everybody wants, but it's not going to have to be instantaneous.
Right.
Because we should be scoring points in bunches.
That's a great point. That's something that we should have been building on more so in the past few years, and it's something we can build on and going forward here, that we can have an offense that can complement you in many ways, and one way will just be to score points. And we can, in today's football, the way that the game is played today, you've got to be able to do that if you're going to play at a high level. And it's clear that we can score a lot of points so that we can help a defense. They don't have to pitch shutouts. They don't have to be – suffocating is great, but just something that can get stops consistently is really all that's required to win a lot of football games. If you can get us even better into a next level there, then we're going to be championship level football and be able to stop people on a very consistent basis. That's a great point, though. You don't have to come in and it's not going to be all on your shoulders. Hopefully that's some momentum they can carry on. Any other thoughts? Anything else to say about the Sooners' victory?
I think we covered it all.
Nope. Got 2 weeks to really nail down the defense and
Set
get everybody
and
on their right spots and
rest,
get people
get
healthy.
Iowa State, had a chance to beat Texas today. So they may not be as bad as we think they
Should
are.
have beaten Texas today.
Should
It
have
looked
beaten-
like a bad call. It looked like a
Could have been a
targeting call
on the
on the fumble. That
Yep.
was unfortunate.
Really bad.
Weird that breaks for Texas. It would have, and the conspiracy theorists would say that it should have broken the other way, but
It's always a tough game for us lately.
Iowa State, yeah. Well, what gives me a little bit of hope is I think Iowa State's a little bit more like Kansas, or maybe a little even weaker than Kansas. Well-coached team, not great coached team. They and we'll cover this more in the upcoming midweek pods, but I think that they are obviously in the bottom half of the Big 12, and again, if we can have offensive success, we should be in good shape in that game. I'm glad it's a Saturday game, I think.
Instead of Thursday.
Instead of a Thursday
Yep.
game. I think high school teams play on Thursdays, and I would like for OU never to play on Thursday, aside from maybe some one-off thing against Tulsa again, on a Friday or something fun like that. But anyway, anything else? Nothing else?
Okay.
Well, until next time, Boomer.
Sooner.